Okay, well, good afternoon to everyone. I am Leonardo McClarty and president of the Howard County Chamber, and we are going to get started with our program. We've got a few people that are continuing to come in, but certainly we want to make sure that we're respectful of everyone's time, as we know that there's just another Teams meeting or Zoom or WebEx that you're dying to get to in the 2 o'clock hour, and so we certainly want to be respectful of that. But we've got a great presentation lined up today as part of our Ask the Experts program. And for those that are maybe new to the chamber and new to what we've phrased as Ask the Experts, this is our small business seminar series where we talk about a number of issues and topics that would be of interest quite naturally to those of you that are in the business community, whether that is a manager, owner, employee, what have you. But the big thing is we try to discuss topics that are certainly of interest. And I think as we talk about returning to the workplace and going back to the office, or maybe not to go back to the office, that is certainly something that is on everybody's mind today. And so with us, we have Louise Humphries, who is the owner of Spatially Speaking. And so you'll hear a little bit more about that, but ultimately with data, she is able to assist a lot of her clients with making truly informed decisions as it relates to going back to their respective offices and space utilization and all of these different things. But really utilizing data as opposed to just kind of, well, I think we should do this, I think it looks like that, and so forth. Also joining Louise as well is Megan Tuman, who is her assistant here. And so the both of them will be presenting. But before we do that, I think we've got a group that is just small enough for us to be able to have some introductions so that they have an idea of who's in the room, and perhaps if there's something that you have a particular interest in that you hope they'll cover, feel free to say that as you introduce yourselves. And so just for the moment here, I'm going to actually see if we can, I'm going to actually ask Louise if you could stop the share just for a second so we could have, and then that way I can see everyone on the screen, and I'm going to just call you out to make it easier for everyone to be able to know when to speak and when to introduce themselves. And so I'm going to start with truly, my right hand today, and Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Sullivan with the Howard County Chamber. I am really interested to hear about kind of all of the new things that are going on with remote working and how it's really changed the whole dynamic of the workplace. And I'm really looking forward to talking and discussing that with everyone.
Thanks, Alex. Next is our Flora.
Hi, everyone. I'm Flora Betra with Target Marketing, your branding solutions person. So I am very pleased to be here and to learn more about this subject. I also have the pleasure of serving on the Chamber Board. So thank you. Look forward to hearing the presentation.
Thank you. Kirsten. And Kirsten, I know you're off mute, but we're not hearing you right now. Okay, I'm gonna come back. Eric?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I am Eric Teich. I'm the Sales and Membership Director for Howard County Tourism. I'm fascinated by it because I'm in the office today, but not in the office every day. And the industry that we work in, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, attractions, they've all been essential. They're all out there. So our office has been able to work remotely and telework. We're starting to come back into it, but I'd also like to be there for my partners and my members as they're out there every single day. So I'm very interested to hear what we got going on today.
Thank you, Eric. Gina.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gina Abate with Edwards Performance Solutions, and we've been pretty much 100% remote, but getting ready to move back into the workplace, and just really interested on any knowledge you guys can give us on how we start to do that or how people are feeling about it.
Thank you. And Kyrie?
Kyrie Jacobs with Bonnie Hennessy Communications. Some of us have come back and majority of us are still working remotely, and I've got employees that are rocking remote. I almost don't want them to come back because they seem more productive at home. But would love to have the camaraderie. So looking at what that landscape looks like when it does actually occur, because I'm not sure that we'll ever be back, at least at my place of work, like we were before. But what things we need to consider when we do all start gathering in the office again.
Thank you. Bill?
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Bill Flayhart. I'm with Edwards and Hill. We're an office furniture dealer. So obviously this is a topic that we want to get as much knowledge of as we can, and obviously out in the field talking with people firsthand. And I want to pre-apologize. I had a customer call this morning. I'm going to have to duck out. It's still hanging as long as I can.
All right. Not a problem. We certainly understand. Eugene? And
Hi, everyone. I'm Eugene Mosley with Edwards and Hills Office Furniture, and I'm interested in learning more about the next steps. So this conversation will be very delightful.
Thank you. Gary?
Hi, everyone. My name is Gary Guy, and I'm with the Baltimore Orioles. So in the entertainment industry here is we're very busy at the moment, getting ready to hopefully allow some fans in for this upcoming season in a limited capacity, albeit. From an employee standpoint, though, it's coming up to a year as of tomorrow for working full-time remotely. So with fans coming in and the inevitable, hopefully we get back to the offices there in the warehouse. They're just interested to see what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Palma, excuse me.
Let me see. Hi. Yeah, I'm here in conjunction with Gina Abate from Edwards Performance Solutions, representing HR, and here to just listen and see what everybody has to say about, their remote versus returning to work options.
Thank you. All right, Kirsten, let's see what we have here. No, we're still not getting it. I've got another way to handle this one, Kirsten, so I will, I'll see what we can do on our end. Okay, but in the interim, Denise, we're just, and for those that are just coming in, we're basically just quickly going around doing introductions so that our presenters will know what are some of the things that you have an interest in, and perhaps even if it's concerns or what have you.
I'm an interior designer. I work with Edwards and Hill Office Furniture.
Okay, excellent. And Cesar Ruiz? Cesar, you're muted. You're muted.
Okay, there we are.
Yep.
Sorry.
There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Well, just like the previous person that presented itself, Denise, I am a designer for the same firm, Edwards and Hill Office Furniture.
All right, excellent. And I'm going to introduce Kirsten. And I'm glad I pulled up your LinkedIn profile, because I would have said the wrong place. And so, because, that's what happens when you know someone, but Kirsten is actually the director of events and catering sales with the Maryland Jockey Club. And so obviously many people know the Maryland Jockey Club, particularly the location down in Laurel. You know it from the racetrack perspective, but they've got phenomenal meeting space. We actually had I guess it was about 2 years ago, our holiday party there as well. And so they have enough space for small events, large events. And so I would imagine, obviously she's probably interested in just kind of understanding, again, the landscape of people returning and so forth. and probably even from a meeting standpoint specifically. So next, we're going to go to Crystal Abram.
Hello, I'm Crystal Abram. I'm the marketing manager for Visit Howard County with Eric. I'm here to just see how everyone's pivoting back to the office and staying remotely. And I personally like the dual thing we have going on right now. So I'm just curious to see what's going on.
Okay, thank you. And let's see here. Lori Adams.
Hi, I'm Lori Adams. I work for Edwards and Hill Office Furniture, and I also am interested to see what the future is going to be for working at home and in the office.
Okay. And let's see here. I'm missing the M, but I know it's McMillan, and so I'm not sure I'm just going to say McMillan.
Hi, I'm Monica McMillan Ajayi, and I'm the HR leader for Columbia Association. And I wanted to join the call as everyone else, wanting to see what our partners are doing. And being a community organization, we obviously have interest in what all of you are doing, not just from an HR perspective. So thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And Scheherazade. I'll come back to, okay, so Scheherazade, okay, we'll come back to Scheherazade in just a second, her having some mic issues, but also, so the last person we've got here, I'm just gonna say the phone number, which is 301-651-9620. If you could introduce yourself. Or if it's someone that is doing, dialing in, but perhaps they're on screen. Again, I'm just gonna, if your phone number is 301-651-9620, if you would introduce yourself. Okay, well, we'll perhaps come back there, but Scheherazade is one of our ambassadors, and trusted chamber members, but she's with Atlas Institute. And so part of what she does there is, and Atlas Institute works with particularly adults that may have various special needs, but at the same time are still able to work and perform various duties as assigned. And so she helps to place many of the people that I guess in their care with job opportunities with employers and finding employers that would be open to being a work site and so forth. And so that's a little bit about Scheherazade. And so with that, I think, have I left anyone out? The challenge sometimes with going around and picking people is that as one person comes off, the boxes change. And so so the order starts to move around. But with that, I am now going to turn things over to Louise and Megan, who are going to introduce themselves and get us started here. And the one thing I just got to say, I was looking particularly at Megan's background and the fact that she has a Master's of Science in Statistics. And I could not help but ask the question, why?
Go first, Megan.
But so I was one of these political science urban studies guys that I just got to write all of the time. But certainly, Louise, the screen is yours, and feel free to for you and Megan to get started with us and so forth.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I'm glad we have such a wide variety of audience members. My name is Louise Humphries. I am the owner of Spatially Speaking, and I am the franchise for Doris Research, and I'm going to let Megan talk about that for a second. But my responsibility is the DMV. So all of my projects are done in this area with the full support of Doris Research.
Yeah, so I'll explain Doris Research. We are broadly speaking, a workplace research firm. We take organizations through a design thinking process to work through solving challenges related to their space. So we have qualitative and quantitative researchers here. So to partner my quant, I have qualitative researchers as well. So as said before, I have a background in statistics. I'm actually in Indianapolis. So Doris Corporate is located in Indianapolis, Indiana, but we have franchises throughout the country. So we're so happy to be able to serve your region.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start the presentation. All right. So the study that Doris did was born out of the question of what is remote work doing to organizations, right? So we keep hearing that everybody's so productive when they're at home, and certainly it's, if you don't have a lot of distractions at your house, you can certainly get your to-do list done without the concern of being interrupted by your colleagues and being pulled into meetings and things like that. So, but I think from a business owner's perspective, it might be a little different. So with that said, you see here this woman looking at the screen, and if you just think in your head about what is it that she's doing, you know, and I think you'd say focus work, right? This is what it looks like when I work from home or the office. But if we go to the next screen, this clearly is a pre-COVID image of people collaborating. So, and that's very obvious. This is what collaboration looked like a year ago. But if I go back here, we can all say that this is what we look like right now. And we're all in a meeting, staring at our screens. And this, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, is what collaboration looks like today. So just kind of from that mindset, collaboration doesn't look any different than working individually or doing focus work at the moment. So, like I said, the idea was to study productivity, and here's the group from Doris in the Indianapolis setting. And all of these individuals participated and initiated the study that we are going to go through. So immediately when you start to do interviews and talk to different people from organizations, it quickly became evident that when you start to talk about one foundation element of business, which is productivity, you can't talk about it as a silo, right? All of these other foundational elements are part of an ecosystem that creates a work environment and a workplace. So the study ended up involving all 5 of these foundational elements of work. The study was set up with 16 organizations with 10 vertical markets and a wide range of sizes. So it had a broad reach. If you look at the demographics broken down even further, you'll see that about 25% of the companies had people that were in the office, a third were working from home, and at that point back this fall, you had a little over a third hybrid. So this was actually, you know, people working from all different scenarios. The age groups were quite varied as well. And I think another really important piece is that you had all job levels represented, everybody from the leadership team to management to individual contributor. And I think that is certainly very important because we all have different points of view depending on our job level. So the study was conducted over the course of 6 weeks, like I said, this past fall. We had 81 participants. There was an initial project alignment meeting so that everybody was on the same page about what the expectations were and what the goals of the study were. The Doris team conducted 77 individual interviews. And I think it's important to understand that The interview process is very near and dear and extremely important to Doris because a survey is very one way. You present a question and somebody answers it, but there can be no dialogue if you don't necessarily understand their answer, or you want to take that answer to another place. So I think it's really important to understand that we did the interviews and were able to ask a lot of different questions based on the answers. The other really interesting component to this was, and Megan, if anybody has any questions about this process, Megan, this is her dream child. She had developed a program that the individuals that were part of this study were committed to using to capture any sort of interaction they had over the course of it. It was 2 full days, correct, Megan? So literally, if they sent an email, if they picked up the phone, if they did a Slack, if they did a text or received a text, you recorded it and how long it was, and you recorded information about it, so that there was data around the way people were communicating and meeting remotely. And then the culmination was a roundtable meeting to review the findings and this presentation. So with that said, I am going to turn things over to Megan to go through the results.
Thanks so much, Louise. Yeah, and as mentioned in the chat, I want to say it here too. I spent 8 years teaching higher ed statistics. So if you need to interrupt and ask me any questions, I welcome that. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have as we're going through this. So please don't feel like you have to be quiet or wait until the end for any of that. So, but starting off, Louise talked about these 5 components that we set forth to understand how they were functioning in the office, remote, or in what we're calling hybrid is when you're working both from the office and home. I think that might be a jargon term. So it's some sort of amalgamation of the two. And as we started sifting through this data, what we realized very, very early on is that all 5 of these components make up a system within an organization. So as you affect one, the others are affected. And so we further defined them, and we realized that innovation and creativity are really fundamental to organizations, and fundamental in the way that if we're thinking long term about where our organization is going and what needs to happen, we probably have to be coming up with new initiatives, new ideas, and really be innovative in that. And so at the bottom of this pyramid system are those 2 items. And then you work your way up this system. So once you have your new initiative, let's say, or new idea, then you move up and you collaborate and you figure out how it's going to happen. You strategize. And then it goes up into productivity, which is the task oriented, what needs to be done to move this forward. So what's interesting here is the idea that productivity is maybe sustaining and maintaining. It definitely was a focus of a lot of people in 2020 because of the fact that we were just holding on for survival mode. And I think something that's starting to switch is this idea of, okay, now what's next? What do we do next? And I think that's going to require business leaders to start thinking about, okay, let's move back down this pyramid and let's start figuring out how do we provide innovation and creativity and build it upwards for our organization. So as Louise mentioned, we do interviews. So as opposed to surveys at Doris, we do interviews and partner that with some sort of quantitative, whether it's a usability study or in this case, this collaboration study. And that's so that we can understand, get a depth of data. Well, as we're talking to individuals, we say these jargon terms, creativity, collaboration, but there's a human side of that. And so we decided it was important to talk to industry leaders about what does that mean? What does this mean to an individual who's working at your organization? And so starting at the bottom of this pyramid, you'll see that creativity, anytime we asked people about creativity at work, it was an energizing activity. When we get together and we create new things, it really is energizing to be together and do that. Innovation was all about communication. So if we have a new idea, it is only going to move up this pyramid or throughout our organization if we get multiple different perspectives looking at this. So if we think about it in an organization, we might need marketing to look at it. We might need HR to take a look. We might need finance and all of these different groups to come together and say, okay, yes, this is an initiative that we want to take on. We're going to move forward. Strategy is all about effort. And I like to describe this effort as a two-way effort. So when you think about getting into a strategic meeting, they are effort filled. You know, they're kind of those tough meetings to be a part of, but you're also defining the effort that's required for something to happen. So I consider it sort of a two-way effort. Collaboration is all about accessibility. We can't be here in this meeting together if you don't make yourself accessible or available for yourself to do so. And up at the very top is productivity. Associated with responsibility, something that's really interesting here to note is when we were talking to individuals about responsibility, productivity, they were talking about, am I able to get the stuff done that I need to get done? I have this to-do list. I feel productive when I'm able to check things off that list. As we continue having these conversations, something that was interesting is this idea of what we call small p versus big P productivity. So individually, we call that small p productivity. I'm able to get what I need done. But then for an organization, that doesn't always necessarily correlate directly to, is our organization as a whole being productive? And so it's really important to think about the nuances of what does small p productivity look like versus big P productivity. So I'm going to take you a little bit deeper into each of these, and then Louise is going to pull you out at the end. So in each interview, we asked individuals to rate on a scale of 0 to 10 how well each of these were performing in the past, present, and future. And let's think of this as past pre-pandemic, present in a pandemic, future post-pandemic. And so you'll see there's a collective dip here in the middle. Things are hard. And then there's a rise to the future, which is generally showing us the collective hope for things getting better towards the future. But there are two lines really here that I want to point out. One's the teal line and the other is the orange line. The teal line here is collaboration. And what I think is interesting to think about here is if we go back to that second picture that Louise showed us, and how we define collaboration is really getting together in person, tactile. And so it was based on that definition. Before, it was working really well for people. And then it took a collective nosedive because now we're all virtual and we have to learn how to do this and it's hard in a different setting remotely. And then what I think is most fascinating here is it increases, but it doesn't go back to where it was before, really exemplifying this idea that we're going to be remote in some fashion, right? So we're going to be able to also get back and collaborate, but there's going to be some remote aspect to this or virtual aspect to this. And so there's a little bit of challenge there. The other line I want to point out here is the orange line. This is the only line that has an increasing trend throughout the whole graph. And this is innovation, which I think is fascinating. And if we think about this here, I'm going to bring back the same analogy as I had before. This is sort of a little I innovation. It's like I feel like I've been innovative because I'm learning how to use new tools. We've spoken to, let's say, lawyers who are used to everything was on paper and now they know how to use DocuSign. And so that feels innovative. There are new ways of doing things. I can Zoom, I can Teams, I can WebEx. But if we think about that line continuing to increase to the future, let's think about the opportunity that exists in the mindset that people are in, thinking about I'm innovative, I'm going to continue being innovative. And so there's opportunity there to tap into that mindset, really into the future. So starting back at the bottom of that pyramid, I'm just going to pull out an insight. There's a 48-page report that's associated with this, but ultimately here are some just interesting findings that we had. So coming from that quantitative data where we talked about types of collaborations that were occurring and where they were happening, what was really fascinating is this was Q4 of 2020, and people were going into the office specifically to have creative and strategic meetings. And so as we're starting to look at this, it really starts defining for us the type of work that's happening in the different spaces and or how those spaces support certain types of work. So if you'll look here, we've had large numbers of people going to the office for creative and strategic meetings. But when you look at home, that dynamic flips for project related and task oriented. So really starting to look at the idea that people who are working from home or remotely are really focusing on some of that project related task oriented work.
Hey, Megan, just a quick question here.
Sure.
So going back to that previous slide.
Yep.
So where you mentioned the creative and the strategic was being taken place in the office, but the work being done at home, do you have, I guess, from maybe a time perspective, any amount of data that basically showed, and I'm sorry for the dog barking, that showed whether or not that office time was a shorter amount of time, whereas the home time was maybe longer?
Yeah. So at this point in time, I don't have necessarily the length of time. I can tell you that when people were in the office, it was usually a day at a time. So they pick a day they were going to the office, they'd be there. And I specifically asked when they were entering their data that if they were working, they would just indicate which location they were in, but not necessarily the duration of time at that location. Does that make sense?
No, it does.
Okay. This next one, talking about innovation and communication, I started talking about this a little bit. What was interesting here is this idea that when we asked people to define bringing innovation to work, so this is switching people's mindset from individual innovation to organizational innovation, they really closely related it to creativity, almost so much so that if you think about those two boxes, they're really integrated with each other. The one nuanced difference was this idea of communication. And so creating an atmosphere where all voices are heard, we get a wide variety of perspectives. Now there is a support here with technology in that, you know, I wouldn't necessarily be able to meet with you all if we weren't on Zoom. So there's a geographic opportunity with technology. And so this definitely can be advanced and supported with technology, though, as we're thinking about where Zoom and WebEx have a place in our business as we move forward, it's important to think about the fact that this might be challenging for some. So those who may not speak English as a first language, those who may be hard of hearing and or use lip reading as a support to their communication. For those of you on Zoom, if you only have one screen, my face is really, really small up in the corner and you have my presentation really large. And so it's really hard to use my lips and lip reading as a support to this communication. So just different things to keep in mind as we're thinking about supporting everyone in our organization. On the right-hand side of that, we had importance performance, just innovation right now not performing the way it should. So, no, that's okay. That's okay. We ask everybody how important bringing innovation to work is every day, and it's really just underperforming at this point in time. And so as business owners and business professionals, it's important to think about how do we bring that back? How do we help that perform the way it should be, whether it's with space or place or just a shift in focus? This next slide is all about strategy. And remember, I defined it as being effortful. They're intentional, they're usually scheduled, they're very purposeful. What's interesting here is this graph, and that at this point in time, middle management were having a majority of the strategic meetings. And so if we think about these meetings being the effort-filled meetings, this is potentially a group of individuals that could use a little extra support. And if we think about them all being on Zoom and this idea of Zoom fatigue right now, it can be draining. And there's an extra effort that people are experiencing right now in figuring out the technology. You're muted, you're not muted. My internet bandwidth isn't working today. Let me go off and come back on. I'm back-to-back Zoom meetings. All of those examples are, you can almost feel the energy in that being more difficult. And so if we look at middle management being those that are having a majority of those experiences right now, that's also a group that could use a little extra support. And there's a place later where we'll talk about how space can also provide some of that support, just because it's a little bit easier to function in a space that's set up for the purpose of working, and the differences and what that provides there. Next, we're talking about all about collaboration and accessibility. And what I think is fascinating here is when we were asking people to record their collaboration data, what came out of the impromptu encounters. So any of these, let's call them spontaneous, organic encounters that happen at the office, this was very validating data to us. So they were occurring in common areas, stopping by offices. You turn around at your workstation and ask your coworker a question. Maybe you're walking in the hallway and you see somebody, oh, I meant to ask you, can I get so-and-so's phone number, whatever it may be. This is all as we would expect. We think about those pre-meeting meetings and post-meeting meetings. That's what our jargon term for the maybe 5 minutes that you take to walk to the meeting with a coworker and you're able to talk about a few things, or after the meeting as you're walking back, you can debrief on what just happened. And now it's much more formal, right? If it's a scheduled meeting, you show up to the meeting, we're here for a certain topic, we're going to do that, and then we move on and we exit out or we leave the meeting. And so you're maybe not able to overhear relevant conversations, that sort of thing. And then what's interesting is many people believed impromptu collaboration wasn't happening in a virtual environment. But our data said it is occurring, just much differently than how we define it and what we expect based on being in the office. So this slide shows all of the different methodologies that we're using right now to collaborate virtually. And what's interesting about this is that it's occurring, impromptu collaboration is occurring virtually, but now we have to figure out, do I instant message that person? Do I go on Teams? Can I call them? Can I text them? If I email them, they're not going to answer their email until 6 o'clock tonight. And so I need a more urgent response. So how do I get that response? Some people prefer not to make phone calls. Others are just, hey, pick up the phone, give them a call. And so what's challenging here is that there's no what I call rules of engagement. And so we're all trying to get in touch with each other asynchronously. And without having those rules in place, it's hard to know. And I think people set up these rules for themselves individually. I'll give you an example here at work. My boss, Sam, she's very busy on Zoom calls all day, every day. And so if something is urgent that I need her to see, I text her. If I email her, I know that I may get a response that night at about 11 o'clock. But it could be a full 24 hours before I hear back from her. And so there's this idea that we even have an instant messaging platform, but she won't always look at that. And so I've got to think about strategically, how do I get in contact with her to get the response that I'm looking for based on, urgency? And so if if we don't have rules surrounding that, then everybody's sort of doing their own thing and it becomes the Wild West, if you will. And so people are feeling the pain of this. Right now, collaboration isn't performing up to people's standards, whether they're at home or at the office. What was interesting here is on the right-hand side of this screen, when we ask the nuanced question of your ability to have impromptu encounters, that green bar meets the importance. So at the office, we know how to do this and it's functioning the way we expect it to. But at home, because of all of those different modes of communication, we're missing the boat a little bit, and there's a time lag because of the asynchronous nature. And so that's the biggest deficit that we're seeing right now, is in this idea of how do I get a hold of somebody in a way that maybe isn't scheduled. Last but not least, we have productivity, the top of that pyramid. And this is really pretty straightforward. Yes, you can be more productive at home because you can put your heads down time. If I'm at home and somebody gives me a call, I can just flip my phone over. I don't have to answer it. And so what's interesting here is that impromptu collaboration at the office can be seen as a distraction, right? So if I'm knocking on a colleague's shoulder to try and get an answer, that's disrupting them from whatever they're trying to do. And so for those that productivity is really important or necessary, it can be really helpful to have that heads down time at home. And so people like that their availability may be limited.
So what does all this mean? So to set up the results, we have set some things. We're talking about a post-COVID world, which I know we all can see in the not so distant future anymore. We're talking about organizations that have a healthy culture and communication style. These obviously are oversimplified examples. I think one of the things that we have found that's critical is aligning your the future of how you want your organization to work with its culture. So it's really going to be an individualized by company plan, and which is exactly the last bullet point. It is very, very much company by company. Even though we feel like everybody's sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what their neighbor's going to do, this is going to be very organizationally specific. So scenario number one, which is where most of us came from, right? Where we got up every day, we drove into the office. Some of us had long commutes, whatever the case may be, but we pretty much could count on who was going to be there. If there were remote scenarios, they had assigned days that they didn't work in the office, things like that. So it was very much a set kind of scenario. And what we found is the office is set up to accommodate all of these different foundational elements very well, with the exception of productivity, because that is where you get the most distraction. And I don't think anybody would be surprised, even in a pre-COVID world, that that's why we had focus rooms, and companies were developing libraries where there was no phone allowed and things like that, so that there could be a place for employees to go and get away from those office distractions when they had heads down work to do. So scenario number two, which is pretty much what most of us are in now, is that we're home all the time. So obviously, depending on what kind of distractions you have at home, you can get a lot of your tasks done, right? So you can shut out some of the distractions from the office. You can choose when you pick up the phone, or you schedule a meeting. So there's very little impromptu distraction. But on the flip side, doing all the other activities takes more effort. So you have to schedule the meetings, the WebEx calls. Sometimes you have to prepare for meetings differently because you're not sharing paper or drawings. Everything has to be projected. So there's no whiteboards unless you learn new technologies, and everybody's on board with that. So there is a little more effort to get those other things accomplished. So I think this is the surprising finding, is that we all keep talking about hybrid, and that we all like the idea of spending some of our time at home and some of our time at the office. But what we've not or not think, and we know that the time at home increases productivity, but what does it do to those other foundational elements of work? And because we know we struggle with them remotely, what happens when some people are in the office and some people are remote? What happens when we're not all on the same playing field that we're on now? And I think that one of the things that is going to be a real challenge, or what we found is the challenge for the hybrid work environment is rolling it out and doing it in a way where all of these things, the essential foundational elements that we need to work in the office do work. And part of that is around putting together the work plan that works best for you, not only your organization, but the departments within your organization. You might have a whole group of people that you want them to do nothing but be productive. And then you may have a whole group of people that you want them to clearly be creative all the time, because that is what's going to move your business forward. So when you think about a plan, it's so much more than just opening up the doors and letting people come in. It's setting up the office properly. It's figuring out how to get everybody that you need to get there to move things forward there on the same schedule, and then all the personal things that people are dealing with. So it's a much more complex rollout, and while it's exciting and everybody can't, there are many people who can't wait for it. I think if it's not implemented properly, that excitement is going to wear off really quickly and lead to a lot of frustration. So again, it's so critical to develop a plan for your organization. And the study that Doris did led clearly to the next step, which, most organizations are talking about some sort of hybrid scenario. And again, I think that leaders are almost frozen in place when they start to think about all of the different elements that have to be addressed to properly implement a hybrid work program. So I think hot off the presses, either this week or next, Megan and her team are introducing a hybrid workplace workbook that organizations can purchase, and it takes them through step by step how to implement the path forward. And I think the critical thing about that is it causes them that you have to have your whole leadership team together, and all those voices in the room, because it's going to address and really get companies to figure out and answer questions they probably haven't even thought of yet. So I think it's a really good way to walk through that plan, and there will also be workshops associated with it. But I think that the most critical piece of this is there is a complex set of different and diverse scenarios that have to be thought through to really, I think, appropriately and best implement a program for your office that supports, and most importantly, supports and keeps everybody productive. So while we don't have all of the answers, we certainly see the light at the end of the tunnel and are developing tools to help companies work towards the answers themselves. And with that,
Louise, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Eric.
I want to open up for questions.
Yeah, so my question is, going back to the last chart that you shared for hybrid, where you saw productivity and effort were at its lowest. Does that kind of piggyback off of what you just talked about? Is so many businesses are really trying to figure out what hybrid looks like for them, that you are spending more time on your logistics and just trying to stay communicated with half or less than half of your office in and half or less of your office out. So is that what kind of that is? Because I know Leonardo and his team is hybrid, as I think we've seen today, and my team's hybrid, as we've seen today. So I was just curious why the energy, and then the effort were so much lower than kind of all being at home or all being in the office.
I think part of that is the extra effort that it takes to figure out who's where when. And if we're going to have a creative meeting, are we all going to meet at the office, or are some people going to be at home? And you may have already figured this out, which has increased those bars, right? So it's not the fact that it can't work or it won't work. It's a matter of figuring out how to put the effort in to increase those bars where it needs to be. So maybe on Wednesdays, our whole team needs to come in for the staff meeting. But I always know that so-and-so is going to be at home on Thursdays. And we want to make sure people come into the office on Fridays. So I think the key here is that if you have each individual choosing their own adventure, it might get messy. And so we need to be what I call bowling with bumpers. So we got to put the bumpers up so that we're flexible within there, but we have some guardrails and we know how to function, and that will increase everything, because I think we know that the expectation and let's say culturally it'll be supportive, and attraction and retention, all of those factors are moving toward this idea of flexibility and hybrid. It's just that it needs to be done with planning and with thoughtfulness
and communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Going back a couple of slides, you had mentioned, and I'm just confirming that I heard this correctly, that production of an individual that's home versus at work, that they tend to be more task oriented versus project oriented, so that someone working from home is going to be more overall project oriented and not as productive because they're more task based. Is that right?
I think it's less about the function, because I think that will vary based on organization. We've worked with organizations who have call centers who they're going to permanently be home based now because they were able to successfully show. We have others we've worked with, let's say architects, who they really mentoring and bringing up an apprenticeship. It's important that they're able to redline on actual documents, and that's better supported in the office. I think it's going to be nuance to your organization.
Okay.
And with that said, I think that the type of work that people are doing in those two locations indicates that productivity, task-oriented, project-related sort of has a place at home versus others. I think that's how people have been working.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Megan, my question was going to be, are you also looking at, I guess, kind of where maybe you're able to tie this activity into the conversation that I know businesses are having, in a sense of where they're looking at, in some respects, coming back to the office also from an economic standpoint, meaning, if people are more productive, less the fact of how we're able to collaborate, but just from a pure productivity standpoint, do I need as much office space as I've currently taken on, or maybe can I go to less office space and maybe we just end up having, we maybe go to almost like a hoteling model where, people don't have individuals' offices, they just kind of come in and use the space as they need it because this is my assigned day or what have you.
Yeah, that has been our step too. And what we are of the belief that this is going to be specific to organizations, and it needs to start with your first decision. We're backing people way up. We're backing them all the way up to what are the goals of our organization? What's our culture? What's our priority? And then from there, make the rest of our decisions. Okay, from there, is it part of our organization to go hybrid? Yes. Who, where, when? And then from there, you can decide, okay, now how do we collaborate with each other? What does our technology look like? What does our real estate footprint look like? But I think there's a cascading effect or a decision tree type effect that you have to go through that really starts out with who are we and what do we want to do as an organization? And then the nuances of who works for us as far as maybe departments or, you know, I don't know, whoever it may be. For example, you might be in a building where you have to have a receptionist and they have to be on site 100% of the time. So let's account for them. Our president is not going to get rid of his office. So let's count for him, right? Whatever it may be. And then you can decide on your footprint, I think a little bit later on, but I think you have to make a couple decisions before you get there.
Other thoughts from people that are as to what you've heard, or even maybe as to, I'd be interested just to know some of the conversations that are being held within your, you know, respective companies.
Yeah, or your experience. I'd love to hear about experiences that you're having, especially Eric, and is it Crystal too, who are doing a hybrid model? What's worked for you? What hasn't?
Yeah, so I'll go first, and Crystal, you could piggyback or add whatever you want. So we're a small team. We're a team of 5. So we also run the Welcome Center, but the Welcome Center is only open on the weekends. So we have a weekend staff that comes in and they're here 12 to 4. So they're separate on their own regard. But we're here in the offices. We started a little after Thanksgiving, but because it's 5 of us, it's one person, 1 day a week. So it's just been routine. So everyone's got their own day. And we've established, we have our team meetings at the same time, whether you're in the office or at home. So it's, I mean, for me, it's the commute, to be honest with you. It's a longer day because I can't start right away and I got little kids and you got to manage all of that. And my wife's a teacher. She's got her own stuff going on. But at this point, we're just in a routine of this is my day. This is when I go in. This is when I get everything accomplished. I actually tend to have more meetings on Thursdays because I know I'm in the office. Like you said, the productive, you almost have less distractions being in the office because it is just us. Rather than, I know some of the hybrid situations, you're gonna have more than one person, but as of right now, it's just us. So I think it's worked well for us. I think there's things that we could work on and improve in terms of productivity and innovation as we move forward, but that's all going to come. And the key is that we're back and we're here to help everyone. So Crystal, if you want.
And I was going to say this, well, I was just going to add, Eric, similar to what, you know, we're the same size right now. So we've each been picking a day and that's been the thing that's worked. I would say the other challenge, and Megan, it'd be interested to know maybe from a statistics standpoint or whatever, we've also chosen what we've done because, quite frankly, because of the school situation. And, you know, and so some of it has been a result of if you have school-age kids like Alex and I do, and Lynn, and what Howard County has chosen. So in some respects, you almost have to be home just because of the whole hybrid learning environment scenario as well.
Yeah, to piggyback off you guys, yeah, like Eric was saying, it works for us. I have Fridays in the office, which some people are like, it's Friday, but I personally enjoy it because I'm home all week. I'm by myself. I don't have kids at home. So going in on Fridays, you know, I'm doing my printing, I'm having my meetings. I get to go to my favorite coffee shop that I don't go to anymore. So I look forward to that one day, but I do get a lot of things done during the week, but that one day is like me tying my week, like, you know, wrapping it up for everything I've done all week. So I personally enjoy it, and our team meetings work. Have you guys seen anything with what time people should be meeting, the collaboration time? Should we, you know, is there a particular time of day we should be meeting, to early in the morning, midday, or in the afternoon? What's working for other organizations and companies?
Again, I think that is individualized, right, Megan?
Yeah, we've seen businesses that do core hours, what we call core hours, where you have some of them, it's shortened, so it's maybe from 10 to 4, so there's 6 hours a day where you're expected to be able or available to take meetings, and then you can be flexible outside of those hours, let's say. So if you want to do the morning and then you're off at 4, that's an option. But those times are flexible, as well as, we've seen organizations when you're dealing with time zones as well. And so now we're, if you're a bi-coastal company, then there's going to be a time in the day when everybody can overlap and take meetings. And so really defining that, I think, and communicating it is the key here, as Louise had said.
I agree.
I think the challenge also gets into, obviously when you start getting larger, because when you're smaller, you can take into account of, who has kids at what age, and being able to schedule meetings when the kids are on the computer and in school, versus, okay, let's face it, some of the challenges that we end up having, and we laugh about it, is when it's time to fix lunch. And but the thing is, we've even factored that into, from a chamber standpoint, as to how we plan our events. I mean, as an example, scheduling this at 1 o'clock. Well, factoring in, okay, kids are back on computers at 1. So we don't do a whole lot of things in the 12 o'clock hour, unless it's, say, a town hall with a congressman or something, and their schedule is such that you've got to work around it. But we try to schedule things at 10, because we know that school starts at maybe 9 or not, what have you. So trying to factor in those things when we schedule our programs around when the school system is doing things. I think it gets difficult when you've got facilities like a CA, and when you've got, or like in Gina's case, when you've got people even on site that are at, whether that's at CMS, NSA, Social Security, whomever. To me, that's when I could see probably the juggling. And then it becomes a matter of probably individual team or departments schedule things based upon their teams, but then you've got to schedule meetings from a core leadership standpoint. So that's where I think the dynamics start changing the bigger you get.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Leonardo. So at Columbia Association, at any given time, because we have seasonal workers as well, we can have up to 2,000 employees. But our regular core, when you're looking at full-time employees, it's close to 300. And then there's a core of about 150-ish part-time, and then the rest are seasonal. So we have probably about 100 employees that are what I would consider office workers. And the other team members are either our associates that work at the gym facilities or in our open space areas. And so, it is quite a juggle, because it's easy for us to figure it out as a leadership team or as office workers, right? But with our other team members who are truly the face of the organization, it is a struggle, because our people in open spaces don't have the option or opportunity to work remotely. We've been able to move some of our sport and fitness activities, and only some of them, right? Because we've got workers in those jobs too that have to be front and center. But our team members who can deliver sport and fitness services online, they're able to do that remotely, but the ones who are teaching golf can't. So, we really do have a hybrid, and fortunately it has worked out fine. Team members have rallied around each other who are in positions where they can't necessarily work from home. And managers and team members have worked together to figure out how they can put schedules together to make sure that everybody's needs are accommodated. So there's been a lot of collaboration and teamwork, but from an office perspective, it's been easy. And, when we go to the true hybrid model, we'll do more of what I do in my department from an HR perspective is, there needs to be HR presence every day. So we'll have one person in the office every day. And this way, the rest of the team gets to, you know, pick and choose, but on a scheduled basis, who's going to come in which day. So that seems to work. And we have found the collaboration tools to be very good. So we've been lucky that way.
Well, I guess any more comments as I look at the clock here, and we've gone a little bit past 2, but I think the dialogue has been good. I think hopefully for everyone, as well as for both Louise and Megan, as you guys continue to take, I guess, both the statistical and even the non-statistical information back. But again, I want to thank the both of you for sharing this information. And again, I hope it's been helpful for everyone. And just as a few reminders as of upcoming chamber events and activities that you could put on your calendar and so forth. Probably the one coming up soon will be on Monday, which is what we refer to as Policy Matters. So for those of you that are interested in what's taking place in the General Assembly, we'll be on at 8:30 with Delegate Trent Kittleman, as we will talk with her. And again, you'll be able to get details, and that's live streamed both via YouTube and Facebook. And then also our member orientation will be next Tuesday. And then also our GovConnect programming, which is for our government contractors, will be our Scale Up series is on the 24th. So certainly a lot going on, and you'll continue to get information from us as we try to figure out what we will be doing from a program delivery standpoint as things continue to open up. But thank you all for coming, and want to just also acknowledge our annual partners that you can see on the background behind me as well. So thank you all, and continue to enjoy this great day that we're having here. I think we're actually maybe getting close to 70 today. So get off the computer and maybe get outside for a bit and take a walk. But thank all of you for coming, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.